Hey guys, so I wanted to do a different type of video today. It's going to be more of an update video on what's happened recently. I haven't been posted many videos in a while, but I have been up to some stuff and am preparing to do a little bit more videos in the future. So first I wanted to thank all those who are subscribed. I really appreciate that. And I thank you all for watching this video if you do. Uh, if you do enjoy this video or other videos in the channel, please like and subscribe. I really appreciate that. And so let's get into this. So this weekend, on Saturday, I participated in Tier 1 Con. Really fun cEDH tournament. I had to wake up pretty early in the morning, but overall, I really had a good time playing it. I pulled out my Turbo Tibalt cEDH build for this deck. Some people were surprised, but I think the deck performed pretty well. My two losses were on against some of the best turn 1 starts I've seen, like really good turn 1 starts, especially for the game. And so it's not I can't really say I'm pretty disappointed in how the deck performed. The one game that it wasn't a one game where people just didn't have the best draw they could draw. I won that game and did pretty well. So I only ended up playing 3 games, even though I made it to the semifinals. Won my first game, lost my second game, and then had a draw in the third round. So I ended up basically just getting the 4 points needed, and then I moved on to the semifinals. I definitely would have preferred to play a second game, but I would have definitely preferred to play a third game, but in the end it got me to the semifinals, so I can't complain too much. Would have liked to achieve those 6 points. I'm pretty disappointed that I didn't get to, but it's alright. So, the first gameplay I actually don't have the footage for, the other two I will. The first gameplay I believe will be on Tier 1 Con, or if you want to go back and watch their stream from that day, it was the first feature match early in the morning. Had some trouble with recording Zoom on OBS. I figured out how to do it afterwards, but so that game I actually had a really nice start. I think I was playing a control deck and 2 Turbo decks, and ended up pulling it out with the turn 2 Necropons, which is really what this deck is trying to do. I tutored for Necropons, got it down turn 2, paid 30 life into it, draw 30 cards. I was down to 8 life. I ended up getting hit by my opponent's Crom, and then one of my opponents actually really saved me. One of my opponents had a counterspell, which I'll talk about more when I get. So one of my opponents had a counterspell, but one of my other opponents forced him to play the counterspell, which ended up being one of the main reasons I won. I ended up keeping, I think my 7 off Necro was something like LED, Praetor's Grasp, Cloying the Weak, a 0 mana creature, one of the 0 mana creatures, Praetor's Grasp, Blood Crypt. I should have actually kept a fetch land. I forgot I'd already hadn't found, I didn't have Badlands yet, so I should have kept a fetch land, but I didn't. I think I also kept a Mox Opal, and so I basically just had enough mana up that I could prevent my opponent from drawing as many cards as possible with Heuristic Study. Got to the point where I consulted with 0 cards in my library and then cast an LED into a Thassa's. My opponents tried to make one of the opponents draw more cards so that he could deal with it through Heuristic Study, but in the end I pulled out the win. Game 2 was a different story. One of my opponent, it was me, I think one other Turbo player in more of a controlling 4-color deck, and my opponent went turn 1 Thorn of Amethyst, which is a really punishing card against decks like this in any deck. I did tutor for an Abrade, but I think I made a misplay where I targeted his Yisan just to stop him from getting a land drop. But there's not much to do for explaining for this gameplay, because it was really quick. We were all locked out of the game. Mana Crypt doesn't feel as good when you're paying 1 mana to do it. It feels a lot better when you're paying 0 and getting 2. I actually was set up for a kind of a turn 2 Nas setup, but the Mana Crypt that really was slowed down by the Thorn of Amethyst. Game 3, I obviously got the bye as I mentioned. Disappointing, but it allowed me to get to the semifinals. I still would have rather played that game. I would 100% would have rather played that game. But having a bye is pretty boring. Like, obviously you get some points, but I would rather play a game 100% of the time because that's why I'm there. Winning's obviously nice, but really want to play the format. It's a fun format to play, and can't wait for the next one in March. So then my semifinal, my opponent had an incredible start. Teamer Poly Tyrant. I think he had So his team are Polytyrant versus Valky with me versus a Elstra deck and then a Kodama deck, like at Tibna Kodama. And the Polytyrant player they went like 5 rocks, a land, and a time twister turn one. I actually thought I was in a pretty good spot. Like I ended up getting a turn one Tibalt when it came around to my turn, which is basically if you can keep Tibalt alive till 2 turns after, his -8 is kind of game winning because you get access to every card in every graveyard plus 3 mana. So I was thinking I was pretty set, but my opponent ended up being able to combo off on his during, or he had a emergent zone, so he was actually able to combo off during another player's turn too. This is a point in game to end the tournament, but I still really enjoyed playing and I cannot wait to do it again. So I wanted to make some updates for the deck that I did before this tournament. Added scheming symmetry in for even more tutors. I feel like that's what the deck needs. We're really reliant on getting one of those 2 cards, one of an peer, an ad, or a necropotence, so we're willing to give an opponent an additional card. Also, Valakut Awakening was added in because it's actually a pretty powerful card. When I've started the problem at least once where I add Nas, but I don't hit enough stuff. I hit a bunch of lands instead of 0 mana artifacts. So I end up not being able to cast much off my Nas, and this deck wants to be a main phase Nas deck. So when you hit 30 cards, at least if you're able to generate 3 mana, you can put like 28 cards back in and then draw that. You can put like 25 cards back in and then draw 26 cards. So it's always a really nice way to refill your hand, especially if refill your hand off a Nas and you haven't hit much. I added Imp's Mischief back into the deck recently. The biggest problem is that Deflecting Swat, I don't always cast. I obviously want Deflecting Swat on the deck, but on games where you don't cast Tibalt because he's not a high mana commander, obviously might be a game where you cast Valky. It's nice to have a card like Imp's Mischief so you can also interact in this deck. Obviously, you have Pyroblast and Red Blast, the best stack interaction in red. But Imp's Mischief and also Tibalt's Trickery just give some additional stack interaction. Then for the lands, I ended up adding in Blight Step Pathway before this tournament. I've actually been really impressed by this card because it functions as an untapped black source for Necropotence, Peer, ad nauseum, but it also functions as a untapped red source if necessary. Then I also added a Gemstone Mines. I at one point had Exotic Orchard in here, but Gemstone Mines, it's like Andre Falconwrath plays this card. If you're playing an Andre deck, you'll play it. Because if you're playing a deck that plans to win in the early games, it's actually a pretty good land that can add blue mana if for Thassa's Oracle, or can add any color of mana, so it always functions as a red-black land. And we're a Tainted Pact mana base, so it's always nice to have more lands that can tap for 2 colors. Also, I added in a. Let's find where it is. I think that might be it for new land additions. But I meant to say I moved Peat Bog. I moved it considering the main problem with Peat Bog is that on turn 1, if you don't have any plays, it's really good. But this deck wants to be making plays turn 1. It wants to be tutoring for something. It wants to be drawing cards turn 1. It wants to be doing something turn 1. And so I think it suffers kind of the fact of that it's a little bit slow. And so I kind of removed it. I also took out Shatter Skull Smashing, and in place of it is kind of Valakut Awakening. This deck I think has a decent number of removal with Lightning Bolt and a Braid kind of functioning to take out the most needed creatures, and also a Feed the Swarm. So it kind of functions to take out the most important creatures in a opposition agent, obviously a Drannith Magistrate, which can be pretty harmful to the deck. Hull Breacher. They all function to take out those pretty important creatures. And with the high density of tutors, you can easily find them. And you'll probably hit one off a Nas or a Peer or a Necro. I also took out Victimize. A lot of the times, Victimize is actually really bad off Necropotence because you're discarding into exile. And unless you have, like for Ad Nauseam and Peer, unless you have an LED, it's hard to always discard like your Kiki and your Zealous to the graveyard. Like obviously the deck still plays reanimate, and animate that is just single because say you can cast one of them and reanimate the other. So it's good to have two additional reanimation spells, but you don't really need this victimize, and it's just a hard card to play. One card I did add to considering after the tournament was Opposition Agent. This deck is supposed to be fast, and Opposition Agent is kind of a more mid-range card. But during the tournament, I kind of witnessed the value of turn 1 Opposition Agent and kind of thought about it even more. If you get Opposition Agent out turn 1, especially against like 4 to 5 color decks, 3 color decks, you basically shut down their entire mana base because now they can't use their Fetchland Institutor. And those decks mostly focus on fetches and kind of, as I said, Gemstone Mine, Exotic Orchard, Forbidden Orchard type lands, Mana Confluence, City of Brass. So with Opposition Agent, this deck you can basically shut those decks down completely. So I'm kind of considering adding it back to the deck. So for the future, I do plan on having in the next 2 weeks, kind of trying to get those gameplay videos of the last two things down. I want to post those on the channel because I really had a fun time playing. I really want to bring you more gameplay content because I know that's the best. That's kind of the biggest part about it. It's most enjoyable to watch content, watch people play than it is to watch me talk about a deck for 10 minutes and a video like this. Also, I just wanted to say I really enjoyed the tournament. I want to thanks to Tier 1 Con for hosting it, Tier 1 MTG for hosting it. Tier 1 Con was incredibly fun, and I cannot wait to play the next one in March. So, thank you guys for watching, and hope you enjoyed this video.